Sighting reports there go back into the 1800s and before.
In 1979, a Bigfoot-type creature known as Nobby was reported multiple times only 40 miles away from this particular location.
Oh, there he goes.
In the Pacific Northwest, Kentucky, and in the hills of West Virginia, as well as other North American regions, tales are told of a fearsome mystery creature called the Bigfoot. This creature is said to be a huge, hairy mixture of apes and humans that can only be seen walking about in the deep woods. However, even as these tales are popular, the origin of this mysterious creature has remained a mystery until a recent revelation by the son of a Native American chief, Andrew J. Blackburd, who has given a detailed description of this mysterious creature in his book, History of the Ottawa and Chippewa Indians of Michigan. Join us as we uncover the mystery surrounding Bigfoot and explore the insights shared by Native communities about this mysterious creature. Blackbird's account of Bigfoot in Native Ottawa tribe. In Blackbird's book, after he gave an account of the history of the Ottawa and Chippewa tribes, he proceeded to give the history of the mysterious Bigfoot. According to him, before the Ottawa Island was discovered and inhabited by the tribe, there was a small, independent tribe of remnant Indians who occupied that island prior to that. At the arrival of the Ottawans, there was no conflict or hostility. The remnant race even became allies with them when they were living at Manitoulin, formerly called Ottawa Island, which is situated north of Lake Huron. The Ottawas, thinking that the tribe consisted of an interesting bunch of people, had no reason to think ill of them. Unfortunately, however, their most powerful enemies, the Iroquois of New York, would come to their midst every now and then to make war with them. One certain winter, while they were celebrating and dancing on Manitoulin Island after they had defeated the Juanibagos from Wisconsin, the Senecas from New York, who were a significant part of the Iroquois tribe, launched an attack on the small tribe living on the island. They fought tooth and nail and almost wiped out the entire tribe. The entire tribe would have been completely wiped out if not for only two people who somehow managed to escape and also survive their escape by hiding in one of the natural caves on the island. Even though the two people were said to have survived, the attack still marked the end of that tribe. According to the stories and what was known, they were called the Missing Mackinaco, and even though they were long wiped out, their name still stands today as a reminder of their past. As a result of the smooth relationship they had, the Ottawas and Chippewas called this small island Makina Mackinac, in memory of their old allies. This name comes from the Indian word Makina Makinago, which explains why people think the name Michilimackinac came from here. This story is the earliest one known about the island, passed down through Ottawa traditions. After that, many other Indian tribes, like the Hurons and Chippewas, as well as people from Europe, took over the island and changed its history. Now, onto the real deal. It was said that the two people who escaped from a town called Mishima during the attack launched by the Seneca of New York were a young man and a young woman who were in love. When things eventually calmed down, they put on their snowshoes the wrong way and crossed the lake on the ice, heading towards the north shore of Lake Huron. As to why they did this, it was so that if anyone saw their footprints on the ice, it would appear as though they were going towards the island. They had had enough people and were so fed up with human beings that they avoided everyone and lived alone in the wildest part of the country. The last time they were seen by the Ottawas, this pair of lovers had birthed 10 children, all boys, and all were alive and very well. Every Ottawa and Chippewa believes to this day that they are still alive, roaming in the wildest part of the land, not as regular human beings, but as supernatural beings. That is, they can be seen or unseen, just as they see fit to be. Legend has it that sometimes they simply reveal themselves to be present by throwing a club or a stone at a person walking in solitude, or by striking a dog belonging to the person walking. and sometimes by throwing a club at the lodge night or day, or by hearing their footsteps walking around the wigwam when the Indians would be camping out in an unsettled part of the country, and the dogs would bark just as they would bark at any strange person approaching the door. Sometimes they would be tracked on snow by hunters, and if they were followed on their track, however recently passed, it was simply impossible to overtake them. When they passed, they would then leave something on their tracks, maybe tobacco powder or something else. Once in a while, when they decided to be seen, they would show up and come to talk. Their talks always started with a sad story about the big disaster that befell them on the island of Mackinac. Anyone who was lucky enough to meet and talk to them would immediately become a prophet to their people. The two bigger tribes decided to give these supernatural beings a name. They called them Pagwa Cha Nishnaboy, which are wild and mysterious beings. Pine River County, in Charlevoix County, Michigan, when this place was all wild, especially near Pine Lake, was once considered the most famous spot for these strange beings. Once, in conversation with a new white settler in the region who had made his home near what they now know as Boyne City, at the furthest edge of the east arm of Pine Lake, he shared the tales of the terrifying and unsettling experiences that he and his family had been through. Night after night, non-stop, they would be eerily awakened by what sounded like human footsteps encircling their cabin, making even their security dog scared out of its fur, giving its low growls and fearful barks, which would echo through the dead silence of the night. The settler, in his determination to unravel the mystery, would venture outside each morning, hoping to find some trace of the mysterious intruder. Yet he would always return empty-handed, unable to discover any sign of the late-night uninvited guest. These unsettling occurrences were not uncommon in those early days before the arrival of more settlers. The land, wild and untamed, held mysteries that stirred the imagination and fueled the anxiety of man. Yet with the sudden arrival of more people, such strange happenings became less frequent, quashing the hopes of people who had hoped for some wild adventures. As for the tragic events of the past, such as the massacre by the Seneca Indians from New York, it is believed to have taken place many centuries ago, lost in the ever-ticking hands of time. While some historical accounts may refer back to such events, particularly concerning figures like the valiant Tecumseh, who met his demise at the hands of a soldier named Johnson, the details remain veiled in uncertainty. The tales passed down through generations may offer different perspectives, giving opportunities for different interpretations and debate among historians and storytellers alike. There are memories of what the oldest folks in the tribe, both men and women, used to say. They were there when the British and Indians were defeated, and they all say the same thing without any disagreement. They say that Tecumseh, their brave leader, ordered his warriors to gather and fight the Americans once more. They found a clearing, a spot where they could make their stand. But then, tragedy struck. A musket ball hit Tecumseh's leg, breaking the bone so he couldn't stand. He had to sit on the ground, wounded. But even then, he didn't give up. He told his warriors to run and fight, and he asked them to leave him a loaded gun. He said he'd take one last shot. And those were his final words. When his warriors looked back, they saw something strange, like a swarm of bees, around where Tecumseh sat. And that was the last they saw of him. Nobody knows for sure who shot Tecumseh or what happened to him after that, leaving it a mystery. It is from these wild tales that the stories of Bigfoot evolved. Whatever mysterious creature is seen and called Bigfoot is attributed to the two lovers who escaped the attack on the island and produced 10 offspring, evolving into supernatural beings. Besides Blackbird's narrative of the origin of Bigfoot in Ottawa, Oregon, another region in North America also has a legend about this mystery being. The Bigfoot, as seen by natives of other regions. Bigfoot is a large and mysterious humanoid creature that people claim to inhabit the wild and forested areas of Oregon and the west coast of North America. It goes by other names as well. It is also known as Sasquatch, an anglicization of the name Sask-Etz, from the Halkomelem language spoken by First Nations peoples in the southwestern part of British Columbia. Most people who believe that it actually exists in flesh and blood, or claim to have seen one, have established on a number of occasions that they are hair-covered bipeds with ape-like features. They're up to 8 feet tall and leave correspondingly large footprints. Generally, they're characterized as non-aggressive animals, whose shyness and human-like intelligence make them elusive and thus rarely, if ever, seen, though some wilderness travelers claim to have smelled their stench or heard their screams and whistles. Many of the indigenous cultures across the North American continent include tales of mysterious, hair-covered creatures living in forests, and according to anthropologist David Degling, these legends existed long before contemporary reports of the creature described as Bigfoot. These stories differed in their details regionally and between families in the same community and are particularly prevalent in the Pacific Northwest. Chief Michel of the Nlaka'pamux at Lytton, British Columbia, told such a story to Charles Hill Tout in 1898. A few physical anthropologists, such as Jeff Meldrum at Idaho State University and Grover Krantz at Washington State University, have espoused the biological reality of the creature based on their examination of the 1967 film footage of a purported Bigfoot taken in on the Klamath Mountains in Northern California, or on their morphological analysis of footprints, some of which exhibit dermal ridges, such as those found in the 1980s by a U.S. Forest Service employee in the Blue Mountains of northeastern Oregon. In spite of all this, most scientists, however, understandably choose to remain skeptics and dismiss the phenomenon as the product of the mistaken identification of known animals or simply elaborate hoaxes, with prints cleverly planted to deceive the public. Over time, stories about the big, hairy creature have entered into oral tradition and become part of regional folklore. In the Oregon region, the historical record of this begins in 1904, with sightings of a hairy wild man by settlers in the Sixes River area in the Coast Range. There were similar accounts by miners and hunters that followed in later decades. In 1924, miners on Mount St. Helens claimed to have been attacked by giant apes, an incident widely reported in the Oregon press. Local Native Americans saw an opportunity, and they used this event to publicly discuss their own knowledge of the Hirsute wild Indians of the woods, whose traditions were first documented in 1865 by ethnographer George Gibbs. After 1958, woodworkers east and west of the Cascade Mountains began to report seeing creatures and discovering their immense tracks along logging roads, enhancing public recognition of the Bigfoot name. Witnesses observed these so-called humanoids crossing roads at night, striding furtively through forest and mountain terrain, or digging for and eating ground squirrels in rock piles. Since everyone was talking about it, the concept quickly entered the occupational culture of loggers, manifesting as serious stories, jokes, chainsaw sculptures, and fabricated prints as playful pranks. It got so serious that by the 1970s, former Yeti hunter Peter Byrne had already established the Bigfoot Information Center at the Dalles, gaining national media attention for his documentation of eyewitness testimony and footprints adduced as evidence for a new species of primate. Many other footprints in dirt or in snow continue to be found and reported to various organized groups that have followed Byrne's efforts to gather information. Native Americans in Oregon have increasingly found a way to fit the concept within traditional belief systems as beings with deeply rooted cultural significance. Tribes in coastal Oregon related Bigfoot to ancient tales of wild men who lurked near villages and left immense tracks, as described in Clara Pearson's tales from the Nehalem Tillamook. The legends surrounding the mysterious creature are numerous. Members of plateau tribes, such as those at the Warm Springs Reservation, identify Bigfoot as a stick Indian, a diverse category of potentially hostile beings who stole salmon or confused people by whistling, causing them to become lost. Sightings and stories continue on reservations today, representing a spiritual connection to the pre-contact past and the resilience of indigenous cultural heritage. More recently, in popular culture, the ape-like creature has devolved into a series of sports mascots, children's entertainments, and cryptozoological reality shows. It has also been playfully promoted in state legislation and celebrations. Politicians in both Oregon and Washington have proposed bills to protect the supposedly non-existent creatures from hunters, and hairy humanoids have served as official state mascots, first as Harrison Bigfoot for Washington's centennial in 1989, and then Sesky, the Sasquatch, for Oregon's sesquicentennial in 2009. A number of prominent writers have reflected thoughtfully on the tradition in literature that explores changing attitudes toward the natural world. Through fiction and science writing, they have depicted this supposedly supernatural animal as a kind of charismatic megafauna that emerged in the modern environmental imaginary as an icon of enchantment and endangerment, employed to demythologize connections between humans and the wild in the region's compromised but not unredeemable landscapes. In the Klamath Knot, 1984, for example, natural historian David Rains Wallace uses the mystique of beings to discuss relic species, mythic themes, and evolutionary narratives in his portrait of the Klamath Mountains. In a 1995 book titled Where Bigfoot Walks, lepidopterist Robert Michael Pyle writes about his personal search for evidence of Bigfoot in the mountains of the Columbia River Gorge as he contemplates the human need for wilderness and what he calls the divide between human and animal. Also, Portland-based novelist Molly Gloss borrows from both Native American traditions and the legacy of feminist primatology in wildlife, an elegant fiction of ecological sensibilities and zoological mystery on the lower Columbia River in the early 20th century. Like salmon, this being has become an important symbolic resource through which many Oregonians and Northwest residents have defined their identities and considered their place in the natural world. There are varying claims about the origins and characteristics of these beings, whose origin is not to be determined. The subject has crossed over with other paranormal claims, including that Bigfoot, extraterrestrials, and UFOs are all related, or that Yetis are psychic, can shapeshift, are able to cross into different dimensions, or are completely supernatural in origin. Additionally, claims regarding Bigfoot have been associated with conspiracy theories, including a government cover-up. Different people have claimed at one point or another to have seen a mysterious and human-like being. Terrifying Bigfoot encounters in modern day. The San Francisco Chronicle, in October 1958, reported Gerald Crew's discovery of a set of giant footprints near Weechpec, Humboldt County, California. According to Live Science, there have been over 10,000 reported sightings of the enigmatic creature in the continental United States. About one-third of all claims of these sightings are located in the Pacific Northwest, with the remaining reports spread throughout the rest of North America. Most reports are considered mistakes or hoaxes, even by those researchers who claim it exists. The sightings mostly occur in the northwestern region of Washington State, Oregon, Northern California, and British Columbia. According to data collected from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization's Bigfoot Sightings database in 2019, the state of Washington alone has over 2,000 reported sightings. California reportedly has over 1,600 sightings, Pennsylvania over 1,300, New York and Oregon over 1,000, with Texas being the least, having just over 800 sightings. The debate over the legitimacy of the existence of the enigmatic and the sightings reached its pinnacle in the 1970s, and the mystery being has been regarded as the first widely popularized example of pseudoscience in American culture. In Fouke, Arkansas, in 1971, a family made a report that a large creature, completely covered with hair, startled a woman after reaching through a window. This alleged incident caused hysteria in the Fouke area and inspired the horror movie The Legend of Boggy Creek in 1972, although the report was later clarified to be a mere hoax. In 1974, the New York Times presented the dubious and unbelievable tale of Albert Ostman, a Canadian prospector, who claimed that he was kidnapped and held captive by a family of mystique beings for 6 days in 1924. In 1994, a researcher of mysterious beings and former U.S. Forest Service Ranger Paul Freeman videotaped an alleged creature believed to be the mysterious being that he had reportedly encountered in the Blue Mountains in Oregon. The tape, often referred to as the Freeman footage, continues to be scrutinized, and its authenticity is still under hot debate. In the 1980s, Freeman had previously gained media recognition for documenting alleged tracks of the creature, claiming they possessed dermal ridges. Lori Pate, who was on a camping trip near the Washington state-Canada border on May 26, 1996, videotaped a dark subject she reportedly encountered, running across a field, and claimed it was indeed Bigfoot. The film, which was named the Memorial Day Bigfoot footage, is often depicted in media related to the mystery, most notably in the 2003 documentary Sasquatch: Legend Meets Science. In his research, Daniel Perez of the Skeptical Inquirer concluded that the footage was likely a hoax perpetrated by a human in a gorilla costume. In 2018, Claudia Ackley, a Bigfoot researcher, garnered international attention after filing a lawsuit with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife for failing to acknowledge the existence of Bigfoot. Ackley claimed to have encountered and filmed the creature in the San Bernardino Mountains in 2017, describing what she saw as a Neanderthal man with a lot of hair. Ackley contacted emergency services as well as the CDFW. A state investigator ended up concluding that she had only encountered a bear. Ackley also ran an online support group for individuals claiming to experience psychological trauma as a result of alleged encounters with the complicated creature until her death in 2023. In October 2023, a woman named Shannon Parker uploaded a video of an alleged Bigfoot to Facebook. The footage went viral on social media and was shared via various news publications. Shannon Parker reported she and others observed the subject while riding a train on the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad in the San Juan Mountains in Colorado. The authenticity of the video was debated across social media. Skeptics on Reddit speculated it was a publicity hoax perpetrated by an RV company located in the area, Sasquatch Expedition Campers. The company denied the allegations. In the early 1990s, 911 audio recordings were made public in which a homeowner in Kitsap County, Washington, called law enforcement for assistance with a large subject described by him as being all in black, having entered his backyard. He previously reported to law enforcement that his dog was killed recently when it was thrown over his fence. Anthropologist Jeffrey Meldrum notes that any large predatory animal is potentially dangerous, specifically if provoked, but indicates that most anecdotal accounts of encounters with the creature result in the creature's hiding or fleeing from people. The 2021 Hulu documentary series, Sasquatch, describes marijuana farmers telling stories of giant creatures harassing and killing people within the Emerald Triangle region in the 1970s through the 1990s, and specifically the alleged murder of 3 migrant workers in 1993. Investigative journalist David Holthouse attributes the stories to illegal drug operations using the local Bigfoot lore to scare away the competition, specifically superstitious immigrants, and that the high rate of murder and missing persons in the area is attributed to human actions. Skeptics argue that many of these alleged encounters are easily hoaxed, the result of misidentification, or are outright fabrications, which leads to the big question about the existence of Bigfoot. Does Bigfoot really exist? There are different views from different people, scientists and researchers alike, on the question of the existence or otherwise of the enigmatic creature known as Bigfoot. Some people believe in its existence and are doing all they can to prove it. On the other hand, the others argue that it isn't real, and their evidence is that those who say it is real can't prove it. They attribute every alleged sighting to either mistaken animals or to mere optical illusions, not to rule out the possibility of complete hoaxes too. Nevertheless, even though millions of people believe in the existence of the enigmatic creature, there is no current definitive evidence that it is real. Although some people point to supposed video and audio recordings of the Sasquatch, this is not scientific proof of the creature's existence and can't be substantially relied upon. Additionally, scientists who do not believe in the creature's existence question the lack of evidence, such as DNA samples or captured specimens. Some propose that misidentifications of known animals, hoaxes, and psychological factors play a significant role in perpetuating the Bigfoot phenomenon. However, others are sitting on the fence. They do not say whether it exists or not. They simply claim that the mystery surrounding the mystery animal remains unsolved. As of 2023, there has been no solid evidence pointing to its existence. There are plenty of anecdotal tales of the mythical creature, supposed video and sound recordings, no shortage of legends, and more, including casts of feet and handprints and hair samples. Expert consensus is that allegations of the existence of the creature are not credible. Belief in the existence of such a large ape-like creature is more often attributed to hoaxes, confusion, or delusion than to sightings of a genuine creature. In a 1996 USA Today article, Washington State zoologist John Crane said that there is no such thing as Bigfoot at all. No data other than material that's clearly been fabricated has ever been presented. The author of one review article states that, in their opinion, it is impossible even to consider cryptozoology a science if it continues to consider it seriously. As with other similar beings, climate and food supply issues would make such a creature's survival in reported habitats unlikely. This large creature is alleged to live in regions unusual for a large, non-human primate, that is, temperate latitudes in the northern hemisphere. All recognized non-human apes are found in the tropics of Africa and Asia. Great apes have not been found in the fossil record in the Americas, and no remains of the creature are known to have been found. In genetic analysis of hair samples attributed to Yeti, Bigfoot, and other anomalous primates, published by Proceedings of the Royal Society B Biological Research Journal, scientists in the world's first systematic genetic survey used rigorous decontamination, followed by mitochondrial 12S RNA sequencing, to identify the species origin of 30 hair samples attributed to anomalous primates. In their findings, they noted that aside from 2 samples, none of the submitted and analyzed hair samples returned a sequence that could not be matched with an extant mammalian species, often a domesticated farm animal. The 2 more mysterious hair samples, from an animal shot in India and what was supposedly a nest of Yeti in Bhutan, had a 100% match with DNA recovered from a Pleistocene fossil more than 40,000 BP of Eumeridamus polar bear, but not to modern examples of the species. The report details how it seems more likely that the 2 hairs reported here are from a previously unrecognized bear species. Whatever the case with those 2 hairs, it is important to keep in mind that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. You cannot prove something scientifically until you have bona fide proof of its existence. What do you think about the legend of Bigfoot? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe to see more videos.